So the mid to late 60s saw a pivot in the way protesters approached the civil rights movement. After a man was arrested for loitering in Avondale, police officers raided a bar in Detroit, and officers beat a black taxi cab driver during the course of arrest. Anger rose in the black community. So riots, they sparked across the nation, including right here in Cincinnati.
Black folks trying to loot when they should be shooting. If you're going to loot your gun store.
We had riots going on all over the country, Watson, California, Detroit, New York.
Where there are roving groups of individuals who are looting and throwing rocks.
There was a lot of tension in the African-American community on a variety of issues, housing, education, jobs, and things of that nature.
The late 60s proved to be a pivotal moment in America. It was clear the civil rights movement had taken a turn from the peaceful approach of Dr. King.
Anytime anyone in any way inflicts or seeks to inflict violence upon us, we are within our religious rights to retaliate in self-defense.
Inner cities across America were literally on fire, and the new wave of activism would inspire some of the world's best athletes and musicians, even inspiring John Lee Hooker to write this tune.
Oh, the Motor City's burning.
And all of a sudden, someone threw a brick through the pawn shop window, and then someone else threw another brick through the liquor store window. And the next thing you know, it's like lighting a match.
Cincinnati was not immune. In 1967, the Avondale riots wiped out the business district along Burnett Avenue.
I had to catch the 4 through Norwood, and the bus driver, I've been riding with him for a year every week, and he said, I think you need to duck down.
Hundreds of Ohio National Guard officers were called in to restore order. One person died, dozens were hurt, and hundreds arrested. But the following year, civil rights activist Dr. Martin Luther King would be shot and killed in Memphis, Tennessee. The reaction was swift, with 100 riots breaking out across the nation. Photographer C. Smith was in the midst of the chaos.
I was running and just taking pictures, People were burning up buildings and stuff like that, and I was photographing, and I was scared of getting shot by the police. And I got a photograph over there of the police with his gun in his hand running down the street.
The late 60s also brought about a new faction of civil rights liberators who had a more militant style.
We believe in government that serves the people. In the black community, we want government to serve the people. We have to put a shotgun in every door.
The Black Panther Party had become the new face of the movement, their way of thinking adopted from Malcolm X. They believed in self-protection and caring for the black community, but their style was at odds with police officers, and that led to violent and often deadly clashes. The riots, as violent and destructive as they were, did lead to some change. In Cincinnati, Ronald Twitty would go on to be the first black assistant police chief.
There were several commissions that the federal government put in action, and one of the things around safety services was that safety services, being police and fire, should reflect the communities they serve. And so a goal was to have a 40% representation of minorities in policing. Now, to show you how significant that is, that's back in the 60s. There were fewer than 100 black officers.
And the Sentinel Police Association would form in the Queen City in 1968, an organization of black officers with the goal of addressing discriminatory policies and procedures in Cincinnati police. Out of extreme violence came a hope for future peace. And that concludes the first week of our Black History series, so be sure to join us next week as we not only take a look at the music scene in the 60s, the civil rights connection to the Cincinnati Reds, and the boxing legacy of Cincinnati. Until then, you can visit fox19now.com, or right now on the home page, you can view my stories. Just look under the Black History tab.